Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
My name is Jillian Taylor. I'm 26 years old. I was born in Ayr, which is just south of Townsville, and throughout my life I've slowly moved down the east coast. And I converted to Islam, I think it was 2007. It's funny, I don't remember exactly what it is. My family, I have a brother and a mother and a father, as you do. My mother and father, I don't want to label them with religious things. I think they would be titled as agnostic, if not atheist. My brother, I have a running joke when I talk to people about my brother. I call him, he makes atheism look like a fundamentalist religion. But that has its history as well. Let's talk about my mum comes from Bundaberg, and in her religious experience, she lived in a time where Protestants walked on this other side of the road of Catholics. So I think that has a profound effect on her affiliation with any religion. And that sort of thing also affects my brother's affiliation with religion. My father's family are Baptists, and I used to go to church with Grandma and Granddad, and I would actually ask to go to church with them, and I would ask my mum to take me to Sunday school, which I'm sure she didn't mind because it's free babysitting. So throughout my life, I actually reached out for a religion. Well, Christianity was there, and I went to an Anglican school, and as part of that schooling system, you do attend church, and the Christians who do so take their communion, and that intrigued me, and that kind of thing. And so I grew up to be Christian, but I kind of hid my Bible under the bed and kept it, didn't talk openly about it too much with my family. But I think they knew that I liked religion. And when I went to Spain and got to see what the Catholics do, and that was nice. Knowing about Islam, I think, can be broken down into different sections. There are times that I clearly didn't know about Islam or about Muslims. I think as a kid, and I only realise this now that I've converted, I used to drive past, on the way to school, on the bus, the mosque from Mackay. Every day I'd drive past the mosque. Didn't know it was a mosque. Thought it was a Masonic lodge. It was the moon. I thought it was the same as that thing. And they would have gatherings and stuff, and I just thought, well, that's just a community group. But yeah, now that I've converted, I realise it's a mosque. And when I went to a Christian school, an evangelical Christian school, when I finally moved down to Brisbane, and they spoke of a religion where Jesus was a prophet. I thought that was very believable compared to what I thought was very complicated, a holy trinity of Jesus is the Son, but he's also God, and that I thought, well, you know, that's understandable that people can believe that. I don't know if my knowledge of Islam increased. I think I was, when I went to Spain, I definitely understood about mosques and stuff because of the Islamic occupation of that area. There was clear evidence of the Islamic Empire there, and the school I went to organised trips to the mosque and spoke about needing to cover when you were there. While I was in Spain, September 11 happened, and I think that really sort of made it clear what Islam was. You could label these things now, like it wasn't just someone wearing a scarf and I don't know, maybe they were from Latvia or something, or from some Eastern Bloc country. But yeah, so I could say, well, that person's Muslim. Then it came into university, where I began to meet Muslims. I also went to Indonesia near the end of my degree, and that was very interesting. I mean, I was woken up by the adhan and was quite annoyed by it because the mosque was just on the next block and it was very loud. But we also had a good friend who showed us around. Like, we would take her with us, and we would make sure that we stopped and she took time to pray, and we thought it was nice. We got to see the Muslims there. I was in Bandung at one of the universities there, and on Friday the girls would sit in groups and read the Qur'an. The guys would go off to pray. I remember one incident where I was in the office at the university, and this guy came in and he had like droplets of water all over his face and arm, and I'm like, I had just been very sick the day before, and I said, oh, do you have a fever? He said, oh no, I just went and washed myself, because he just made wudu, like the cleaning process before you pray. I didn't know, I was so embarrassed. Also, I had a trip from Bandung to Jakarta, which I think is about 2 hours, and the driver explained to me about Ramadan. And at the time, I thought it was like anti-Christmas, in the sense that here Christmas is very materialistic, and the idea of fasting appealed to me as it was sort of like giving up material things and self-control and that kind of thing, which appealed to me as well. So I came to know a lot more about Islam while I was in Indonesia. But what sealed the deal for me was, I met a guy and he made Islam look like something that I could be a part of. When I was in Indonesia, I was like, oh, well, Islam's a very nice religion, but, you know, that's for those people, but I'm Christian. But the gentleman who is now my husband made it seem like something that I could do, and I found out that it kind of fitted more with what I believed as a Christian. I think as a Christian I was trying to fit Islamic beliefs about God into it, which didn't really work. Trying to fit Islamic ideas into Christianity, that is, which didn't work. So I found that Islam aligned more with my beliefs about God. And I found that prayer was quite, it was good to take that time out and remember God. So I kind of liked those sort of aspects, the ritual behind it, that you could go to when you needed it, to take time out and contemplate. When I decided to convert to Islam, I told the people I met through my husband that I wanted to do this, but I told them not to tell my husband, because to me it was so important that he wasn't my husband at the time too. It was important to separate my becoming Muslim from him, because no matter how wonderful I think he is, he's not worth waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to pray. Really, he's not worth it. So I really wanted in my mind to separate my coming to Islam from him. So that's how I did it. I tried to keep it sacred. It only lasted like an hour. I think he knew what was going on. When it comes to the reaction from my family about me converting, you've got to keep in mind that there's a guy involved, and my husband is from the Arabian Peninsula, and there everybody knows the stories. I don't think I need to mention any stories. We know they're there. Some of them are in the media a lot, about the way that people from, I wouldn't necessarily say from Islam, but people from certain areas in the world that don't treat their women very well. I think they wouldn't have minded if he was an Australian Muslim, like a couple of generations. They would have seen him, oh, well, that's just his heritage. But I think it was more a problem with the location. I think they were just genuinely concerned that I was being pulled along on something that could drag me into a lot of danger. And there are plenty of stories where that has happened, and I'm very fortunate to have a very good husband who treats me the way that Islam expects a man to treat you, which is very well. Probably don't treat him that well though. My friends, I'm not a big social person. My housemate at the time was like, oh yeah, whatever. Probably a bit sad that we couldn't drink anymore, but she's pretty much happy just to stay being my friend because, you know, it's convenient to have friends. And so she just hung out and we just kept it as it was. It's more with the people who you're not that close with, well, that I'm not that close with, that were a bit apprehensive. And I guess the big question is why, and yeah, why? I don't think when you convert, you really realise how much it's going to change your life. Like, for example, the family might want to go down to the tavern to have a meal, and maybe, especially if you're wearing a scarf, it doesn't really feel like something you want to do. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with hanging out in the tavern, but it's that environment, and I don't know, I just feel uncomfortable. And you don't realise, like, everything, not everything, but a lot of things that you used to do, you just find that maybe you don't want to do that anymore, or it's not really acceptable for me to be there. I mean, it was easy to cut down on the drinking, and I think that was a good thing. And maybe some other things that I shouldn't have been doing, and that was nice. You do have to change the things you're doing, but it's not like so dramatic. It's just like, hey, let's go there. And you're like, well, no, really can't do that. Like, can't go down to Cavill Avenue in the middle of the night. That's not really kind of the good thing to do. Or night clubbing and dancing, that's kind of out of the question as well. Again, just a few things that you just, can't order this Caesar salad. I like Caesar salad. So restaurant choices. I love Chinese. Chinese serve a lot of pork. So that was sad because my brother knows Mandarin, and he just loves to share his culinary explorations with the rest of the family, and that was hard for him and hard for me because most Chinese restaurants serve a lot of pork. I remember thinking a lot at the time that I put it on about how I would cover to go to the mosque, but then I wouldn't cover anywhere else. So what's the point of covering at all? If somebody sees me at the mosque covered and then they see me at the shop uncovered, then I don't really get the point of covering at the mosque, except to pray. So I thought, well, you know, you go one way, you go the other. That's a very black and white view. Life isn't black and white, but so I put on the scarf, and now that the scarf is on, I think, why take it off? And there's problems with taking it off, and that's why I keep it on. Like, the scarf is a reminder to pray. It's easier to pray when the scarf is on. I know in Indonesia, the girls used to carry around this small pouch, and it had their prayer kit in it with their hijab and their skirts. And that didn't really appeal to me. I've got it all on already. Just wash up and then pray. And whereas I can see me skipping prayers if I need to put the whole thing on and pray. And I can pray on the side of the road. I can pull over, I've got the kit on, can just pray. So, and people don't like it, but when people say this, but there is an identity thing behind the hijab. It reminds me that I'm Muslim. I get beeped at sometimes when I'm at the lights because I've got a manual car and it takes me a while to get off the lights, and I just want to flip them the bird. But I go, well, they'll never forget the day that a Muslim woman flipped them the bird. So, and I don't think that's very much behaviour coming of a Muslim woman to do such things or yell or scream, or so it puts me in check, you know. I'm representing people and I need to behave the way that I want to represent them because they're great people. So how does it change my life? Well, I'm an engineer, I work with men, and I have to cover, and that's fine. I try not to let it bother me. I went into my interview and I just said whatever, and my confidence got me the job. They said I was the best, one of the best that they had. It's a little bit different when I go on site, and there's some people who are a bit uncomfortable with it. But when I get talking, they go, well, she knows her stuff, she knows this all right. And the only problem is the not shaking hands thing, which is part of our scarf, our covering, our modesty. That's a real off-put. I mean, to someone stick out their hand and you not shake it, it's really hard on them actually, and that's a struggle for me. I'm very fortunate to be married to someone from the Arabian Peninsula, where I can see what their life is like and compare it to mine. The only problem with being an Australian Muslim is that I'm automatically part of the migrant community, although I don't know how far my family goes back, but we've been here for a while. So that's the only thing that kind of makes me feel uncomfortable. I think that Islam is completely compatible with the Australian way of life. I think that the Australian values really align with Islam, about concern about people, and it's actually my husband's who's got to change the way his attitude was. It's surprising that coming from a so-called Islamic country, they don't value people the same way that we do. I know that's an awful generalisation, but he was telling me about the high number of car crashes and how he was surprised on our long road trip to visit my mum, how we were counting down the people that had unfortunately passed away on that road. He said, well, if only we started valuing people like that. And so, like, that's just an example of how I think those values as Australian are the same values that are represented in Islam. I guess about women working is that just like the women's rights movement had fought for women to be able to choose between the home and work, Islam lets us choose between the home and work, as long as we look after our family. And I think that's what any woman, whether she's Muslim or not, needs to keep in mind. Just that's all I think Islam is asking women to do, is care for your family. Don't let your children suffer because you're working long hours and they never see you, and that's not nice. And I think that's what they mean. Personally, I'm not a religious scholar, but I think that's what they're telling us. And the best thing about Islam is when you do work, your husband doesn't get dibs on your dough. So, which is quite a burden for the husband, but you have the right to keep it, and if you want to give some to him, well, that's good for you and good for him, but it's your choice.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.